Good afternoon. My name is Bruce Hembry. I'm the Chief Security Officer for ziggiz. I am hoping to educate you today on some things that we've built, and hopefully it'll be valuable to you. But the whole concept of today's talk is confessions of what I wish I had known in my last SOC. And this will be, I'll try to keep it short and sweet. You'll note that I'm not using any slides. I've spent decades in the service of Uncle Sam, and I have developed a significant dislike for slides. They are the devil, as Bobby Boucher would say. So our topic today is about data, the way that it works inside of your SOC, and how useful it will become to you. But it'll help you to understand why I came to that realization. My background is in information systems warfare, the United States military, where we're building the tools, techniques, and campaigns that we use for the seizure, destruction, or exfiltration of data from networks that are adversarial to the United States and our allies, and defending against the same. The United States Air Force has been at the forefront of, I'll call it information systems warfare, for literally decades. After I left the military, I ran the operations for the Digital Crimes Unit at Microsoft. The Digital Crimes Unit was myself and 7 other ex-military personnel. We were looking at the way that nation states and organized crime groups built their threat ecosystems, and then we would break into them and steal them. So we did the takedowns of Conficker, you probably remember that name. We did the takedowns of Citadel, Bamatol, Nitol, Rustock, Zbot, and about 28 others. The Microsoft Cybercrime Center is in Redmond, Washington. Strongly encourage you, if you get a chance, go visit it. You can see all the operations that we did there. Each of those operations was either against a nation state or an organized crime group that was doing bad things on the internet. Whether it was something like Rustock. Rustock was a spam botnet, and Rustock was generating the vast majority of the spam on the internet at the time that we seized it. And when we seized it, the global transit providers that build the undersea cables, they thought their links were down because that much spam dropped off the internet. Citadel had stolen over $500 million in the 18 months prior to us taking it down. You're talking about a botnet that's large enough to be listed on the NASDAQ. A threat actor will go to any lengths that it takes to preserve an organism, and I'll call it an organism that can make them $500 million in 18 months. That is why they are investing time and money and automations and AI into building and iterating the versions of that. So they have to continue to iterate. Why do they have to continue to iterate? Because every time they build a version, vendors around the world respond to it with defenses against it. If they're using a simple hash for that defense, that means that they can defend very quickly if they're just using a hash. If you have iterated versions of that constantly spawning from every compromised machine globally, generating new components of that threat and sending it out, then they will never be able to keep up. That is very important. So as part of stealing someone's network, you have to hold it. You have to maintain control of it. So that meant that a bot herder that we had successfully seized their network, they would try to take it back from us. So we had to defend against hundreds of millions of automated and manual attacks every single day to maintain control of the networks that we had stolen from them. Otherwise, it was possible to recover them. That's the constant game of cat and mouse. After I left Microsoft, I went to Palo Alto Networks. Palo Alto is an outstanding security platform, but it is deeply proprietary. That's probably the best term for it. They make and build good products. My particular team was the Cortex suite, an excellent product suite, did great work. We built almost everything that our SOC used. Our SOC was a story of success, but it had significant handcuffs, and that's the secret that I'm going to tell you about today. We had 22 people defending globally that organism that is Palo Alto Networks. Those 22 people were scattered globally around the world in a follow-the-sun model. We were ingesting about 76 to 80 terabytes of data information every day. We were defending 447,000 endpoints and about 4.5 million cloud resources. Our metric for detection was between 8 and 12 seconds. Our metric for response was between 50 and 65 seconds across 36 billion events per day. That is only possible when you understand the data behind security. We had a luxury. The luxury was that we could be deeply prescriptive about which vendors we used in our networks. Most organizations don't have that level of, I don't care. Because instead, most organizations have tech debt scattered all over their enterprise. They're going to have a pocket over here that's got Symantec, they're going to have a pocket over here that's got Cisco firewalls, and they're using Norton here in this spot, and each of those vendors that is within your environment produces churn. It produces a different data format, and every few years, there comes along a new format that everybody says we're all going to go with OCSF, or we're all going to go move to this, or whatever they decide. They come and go, and nobody ever seems to really stick to anything. Tech debt was the problem in many organizations that I spoke to. Inside of our SOC, we didn't have that problem. We had the luxury of saying, we're going to have a single endpoint agent, we're going to have a single firewall system, we're going to have a consistent version of the operating system for every single firewall globally across the entire organization. That is a luxury that 99.99% of the organizations on the planet do not have. Automation was the key to our SOC. Originally, we didn't have automations built into our SOC. It wasn't the backbone, but we learned that it had to become the backbone. Humans simply do not have the scope of awareness to be able to stitch together information from multiple sources, have it make sense, and respond to it quickly. We are only human. Machines are the only way to handle it, so it needs to become machine to machine. For machines to do that, they need to have consistent data formats that make sense to them. If you have columns that are all over the places with different data types, you wind up that you have to build an automation for every vendor that you've got in your organization and the specific version of that vendor that you have in your organization. So you're going to wind up with hundreds of playbooks to get to that place. In our SOC at Palo, I had 56 playbooks that were every single day doing the work of 18 people, always working, never stopping. 18 people that didn't have to be in our SOC because of automation. That's the impact that automation has. If you're not looking at automation now, you're doing yourself a disservice. So focus on automation. Let it become the background of what you've got. I've got 12 minutes. To get to that automation, make sure you have a consistent data surface. That data surface needs to be useful. It needs to be uniform. Security vendors are not going to tell you this. Less than 1% of the data that's in your SIEM is actually being used for a threat decision. I lived it every single day. They want you to put as much data as possible into your SIEM because, frankly, yes, there are threat hunting cases. Usually it's for regulatory purposes, but the truth is that it pads the bill for your SIEM. The vendor wants you to put everything in there just in case you need it. That makes it very difficult to sustain the price of security. You simply can't do it. We were a $80 billion company at the time, and we could barely afford the SIEM. That's the reality of it. When you start looking at very large volumes, when you're ingesting a terabyte a day, 10 terabytes a day, that adds up very quickly. And you're going to find that the tech debt means that you can't practically apply automation against it. That is the secret there, is be prescriptive with what data you bring in, make sure that it's in a consistent format or get it into a consistent format so that you can use automation against it. If you don't have the automation there, you're going to get compromised. Lockbit 4.0. Lockbit 4.0 can encrypt an entire subnet worth of workstations, a Class C subnet, in about 30 minutes, usually less. Lockbit is fast, and this is a place where you can't wait for data to make it into your SIEM, be schematized, ingested successfully, and trigger an automation. If it's taking 2 hours for that to happen, you've already lost a subnet. When we were building a campaign on the offensive side to get into a network, we knew that we had a golden hour to effect change, to get what we were trying to get and get out. We never bothered with changing logs. Your threat actor doesn't do that either, okay? Your threat actor is going to turn off logs if they get an opportunity, but going back and changing logs and trying to cover your footsteps, we didn't do that, and we were operating at the highest levels. You want to get something, get out, and make sure that you have gotten what you needed to get out, or destroy what you have to destroy. So you have nation states around the world right now that are living on cybercrime. Why do they do that? Because it's a lot easier to do that on the internet than it is to get around the economic sanctions that are fencing them in. Think about how hard it is for them to get materials in and out of that country. How hard it is for them to sell things. How much easier is it for them to compromise a hospital somewhere in Iowa and get a $2 million ransom payment? That's the difference. I'll give you an example here. I saw every breach, every single one that we had at Palo Alto Networks for customers. So we would have an insurance company on the outside. They have a customer that just got breached. They would call us, they say, come help, we need help. So we would put boots on the ground to go help that organization. We used to get a call like that every 2 to 3 days. When the war in Ukraine kicked off, I got a call every 2 hours. Every 2 hours, someone else had been compromised that needed help. That's the pace of compromise that we're all currently living with. Automation is the only way to practically address that and be effective and consistent. Humans get bored, we get frustrated, we go on vacation, we want to have a life. We don't want to deal with another alert. That's the last thing you want. Automation's doing that work is fundamental to your SOC work. If you're not employing automations effectively, you're going to regret it. Making it possible to do the automations is data science work. Data science will consistently provide input from the tooling that you have in your environment and then allow you to have that automation come in and affect change quickly. That's the dirty secret, is security is a data problem. Security is a data problem that you have to learn to afford and be effective with. Understanding and internalizing that you've got to understand the data landscape within your organization is fundamental to that. Being willing to understand the costs associated with ingesting that. I'm going to give you an opportunity to guess what we were spending on our cloud expenses every year at Palo Alto. Anybody have a guess? How about $1 billion? $1 billion we were spending on our cloud expenses. Got a spare billion you can spend on your security enterprise? Most organizations don't. There's a saying in racing, speed is money. How fast do you want to go? We kept 200 days of look back in our SOC, 200 days, and that was just because we wanted to be able to look back and explore. Did we do everything right with our signatures? Unless you're building those signatures, you probably don't need to do that. You can probably get away with keeping 30 days. Yes, you have regulatory requirements. It means you need to keep that data for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, whatever it is. Make sure that you take that data that you're storing for regulatory purposes and get it out of your SIEM. It's just complicating things. Store the data that you need, employ automations quickly, and use it efficiently. These are the dirty secrets that they're not going to tell you. You don't need all that data in your SIEM, okay? The other things that they're not going to tell you, when it comes to endpoint defense agents, all of them are pretty much the same. Everybody's within about 1% of each other. One day CrowdStrike will say, we're the best, and the next day that Symantec's going to say, we're the best, and that's just the nature of it. Everybody is really close, really close. So when you're seeing that latest Gartner Magic Quadrant or some evaluation of endpoints, understand the ranking for one versus another. It may be as simple as down to one detection that they missed. Everything else, about the same. It's easy to get caught up in the hype, the marketing hype. The platform play is a good idea if you have the money to support it. So you're hearing platform plays from everybody right now. If it's Palo or CrowdStrike or whoever that might be, they're going to tell you the platform play means that you get to have data consistency. It's a luxury. If you don't have the tech debt that means you can get away with that, go for it. The challenge comes that when you receive your first loss leader pricing to come onto that platform, it's going to be a different price than when it happens for your renewal. Your renewal is where they make the money, because the loss leader gets you onto the platform, and now you have something that is deeply sticky, as they say in the sales world. You can't afford to get rid of it because you have replaced your organs with an entirely new organ set. Beware of platform play unless you can afford it. If you can afford it and you understand that next year your renewal might be 30% higher than it was this year, more power to you. But we're living in a world where everyone is not equal. And where AI comes in and starts applying to that, understand that it gets more expensive still. So I've got 4 minutes. Are there any questions that I can answer about either what I've talked about or perhaps other things in my history?